Okay, now the next thing that you want to look at, or a potential for digital evidence, would be network traffic and logs. Now, if you think about it, every single thing that's attached, whether it be a local network, a small office, home office network, or a SOHO, SMB, small to medium sized business, or a corporate enterprise, again, a Fortune 500, a Fortune 150, what have you, every single device that's connected in any fashion generates logs, generates traffic. All right, so network traffic, including IP addresses, the data that's sent, the actual websites we're browsing or the folders that we're accessing, the data that we're either copying or saving, etc., the protocols that we use, all can be used to investigate a crime or a hacking event. All right, so an IP address, for example, can be used to locate the source and the destination of an event. Okay, it can help us to narrow down where a suspect is located. It could be on our internal network. Okay, we could be in a corporate environment trying to identify who a suspect is, who's accessing files. It doesn't necessarily mean that we know exactly who that person is, because again, someone could be sitting at that person's computer, right? Same thing if we're investigating a crime from a law enforcement perspective as well. Just because we have someone's IP address doesn't necessarily mean we know exactly who that person is. Okay, that gives us an idea, that gives us a start, but that only begins the actual investigative process. So once you have the IP address, we can narrow it down. We can potentially see where they're coming from, what perhaps hops they're taking to get from where they're located to their destination. Okay, they may be trying to hide where they're located, so we can kind of backtrack and see if that leads us to the end, or to the suspect rather. Sometimes it will go to a dead end if they're smart enough and they jump through enough hoops. So it doesn't necessarily always mean we have the person of interest. It can help place a suspect behind the keyboard, as I said, but again, that's just a piece of the puzzle. We have to have more than just that. And then logs themselves are generated by a variety of devices. Okay, if you think about it, desktops and laptops, there's lots of logs within the actual computers themselves as to what they're doing, when they're doing it. Okay, the registry on a PC, there are configuration files, and so forth on Macs and Linux devices. Lots of log files that are generated and saved, typically for troubleshooting. But it also identifies when files were accessed, when system parameters and variables were changed, when people logged on, when they logged off, so on and so forth. So all of these things can help us to build a case. All right, routers, switches, and firewalls on our corporate network, or even if it's in a home and we're trying to identify what's taking place from a whatever location to a corporate location. In other words, someone's outside of our corporate network and trying to come in. Router switches and firewalls, both within our own environment and potentially within a suspect environment, can all create log files and so forth, syslog files on routers, switches, the firewalls themselves. All of these things should be gathered and then correlated. All right, and we'll talk about time offsets in just a moment, why that's important. But once we have all this information, we then need some way of either feeding it into a big data analysis type of tool, and we'll talk about that again in just a few as well, something like Splunk or some type of other kind of non-structured data, big data, if you will, analysis tool, so we can correlate all of these different pieces of information, log files from here, switch files from here, configuration files from here, and put them all together. All right, and then we can correlate the times and kind of get a picture of what's going on. Smartphones, gaming consoles, some other things that people typically don't think of, but again, they all generate logs. Smartphones have diagnostic information. We can tell when it was used, what was installed, so on and so forth. Gaming consoles, whether it be an Xbox or a PS3 or PS4 or what have you, all of these things get IP addresses that they connect to the internet. They generate log files, they generate data. So everything, if you take it and put it into a combined quote-unquote case folder, can lead to a pretty precise picture of what happened and when.